Okay, sorry for that brief interlude. I actually thought I heard a knock at the door, and apparently it was the wind. More information than what you needed to know. So, Fifth Amendment, no self-incrimination, no double jeopardy, due process of law. In other words, we have to go through a process when a person's accused of a crime, and everyone goes through this process. Also in the Fifth Amendment, eminent domain. A little bit controversial. Basically what the eminent domain says is this. Private land can be taken by the government for public use. Kind of controversial. Maybe that's the reason why Jefferson did not put property as one of your natural rights or our natural rights in the Declaration of Independence, although John Locke believes that we do have this promise to property as a natural right. Well, different version, Locke versus Jefferson. We basically say that the government does have the authority to take away private land for public use, but it must be for a specific public use. So, we also then look at the Sixth Amendment. What's in the Sixth Amendment that's really important? Well, the fact that you have a right to a lawyer. If you are accused of a crime, you cannot afford a lawyer. One is provided to you by the state government. Everyone deserves a legal defense. Also with the Sixth Amendment, an impartial jury, a speedy public trial, the right to know why you're being charged with a crime, to confront your witnesses at trial. So the Sixth Amendment goes into the rights of the accused. Eighth Amendment, no cruel or unusual punishment. Of course, that brings up the debate of the death penalty and whether or not we should be executing prisoners. You could argue that any form of execution is in fact cruel or potentially and unusual, not just but and unusual. But of course, that's coming from the perspective of someone who's sitting on death row. We have several states that still have the death penalty as a form of punishment, and the Supreme Court has stated that the death penalty is not exactly a violation of Eighth Amendment rights. So as long as the Constitution and the way the courts interpret this amendment specifically, we're going to continue to execute prisoners. The 10th Amendment basically says that states have certain powers, reserved powers, that the federal government cannot interfere with, such as marriage laws. The ability to establish public schools also cannot be affected by the federal government. We then move on to the 12th Amendment, which talks about the Electoral College. The Electoral College is the indirect method by which we elect the president. So come 2016, which will be a presidential election year, if you vote for the Republican candidate, you're also voting for his or her vice presidential candidate as well. We elect the president, vice president in tandem. We then move on to the 13th Amendment. The 13th, 14th, and 15th are the Civil War amendments. So the 13th Amendment basically says no more slavery. You could still have forced labor, but only if it is defined as a form of punishment by the state government. You cannot force upon them forced labor because you want them to work off their debts. No slavery, no forced labor to work off debts. The 14th Amendment has two important parts to it. The 14th Amendment says equal protection under the law, which means every citizen has the right to be protected by the legal system, by the federal government. The 14th Amendment is probably the one amendment that gets used the most in the Supreme Court when you're trying to get the court to review a case to see if it's constitutional, a law. Also in the 14th Amendment, we nationalize the Bill of Rights, which means the states must respect the citizens' Bill of Rights, not just the federal government. We make it applicable to the states. We make sure the states respect your rights, not just, Big Brother, the president, the courts, and of course Congress. We move on to the 15th Amendment, which says, which is an amendment that goes with voting, and it's very specific. Only African American males can legally vote now. These are the newly freed slaves. Now, of course, states put in place things such as poll taxes, literacy tests, the grandfather clause, which you had to prove that your ancestors, so many generations removed, were free men in this society before you were allowed to vote, which was impossible because chances are your generations before you, if you were in servitude, were also in servitude. It was an impossibility to vote at that point. Eventually those laws would have to go away. There were constitutional amendments that were added to combat these laws, specifically in the southern states, these Jim Crow laws. And of course, it took the Civil Rights Movement, the Civil Rights Act, to get rid of them as well. We then have the 16th Amendment. The 16th Amendment says we now have a national income tax. Helps to formulate the IRS, Internal Revenue Service, and we have to pay taxes to Uncle Sam. The 17th Amendment says that you can now directly elect your U.S. senators from your state. Before then, the state legislature made that decision. 18th Amendment, interesting to mention, prohibition. We banned alcohol in this country. Didn't work. 21st Amendment, jumping ahead, repeals the 18th Amendment. 19th Amendment, women can vote. 1920. Of course, we are going to celebrate here in a few years the 100th anniversary of this amendment. And of course, with that, apparently the $10 bill will have a female figure on a picture of an important female from this country on the $10 bill in 2020. Waiting to see what happens and what that will look like. The 22nd Amendment says presidents can only be elected to two terms of office, 4 years apiece, for a max of 10 years. That way, if a president dies while in office, the VP takes over. That VP can still effectively run for 2 terms of office. 23rd Amendment extends the rights of D.C. residents, Washington, D.C. People living in that area, the nation's capital, can vote. The 24th Amendment said poll taxes, illegal. You cannot force people to pay to vote. It's a free thing in this country. Free elections are a part of our democracy. The 25th Amendment says that if something happens to the president, he's unable to do his job, the VP temporarily can take over until the president returns back to work. If the president cannot take over, he perhaps gets assassinated, such as John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Lyndon B. Johnson becomes the president. He's sworn into office, and then he would appoint a new vice president. 26th Amendment says that 18-year-olds can vote. So that now in every state the minimum voting age is 18. Before the 26th Amendment was passed, in some states you had to be 21. So 18 makes the nationalized age requirement, the minimum age requirement. So what else is in Unit 2 that's important that we need to look at, that we need to mention? Civic duty and civic responsibility. Basically, civic duty, you have to do it. I mean, there's no choice. Civic responsibility, you should do it, but you don't have to. So civic duty, examples: obey the law, pay taxes, attend school. Young men between 18 and 25 register for the Selective Service. The fact that you have to do jury duty, or you could be called to testify in a case because you're a witness to a crime. Those are all your civic duties. You're required to legally do these things. Civic responsibility, you don't have to do it, but you should, such as voting, being informed, watch the news, tolerate others, respect others' rights, and also to do civic good, I guess is a good way of saying that maybe. Volunteerism, helping others. And there's different ways to volunteer in this country. And if you are interested in doing volunteer work, you've never done it before, then certainly come talk to me, go talk to a guidance counselor, talk to someone at your church, someone in your community. There's always opportunities to do volunteer work and to do good things. RAK, Random Acts of Kindness. It's called karma. You do good things happen. Do bad things, well, bad things happen. So, to quickly review Unit 2, and I'm sure this video is very long as well, but when you're trying to go over a lot of information in a unit, well, it takes some time. So back to the curriculum guide, we have the Constitution, we have the Bill of Rights, various other constitutional amendments, the obligations of citizens, civic duties, civic responsibilities. All those things tie into this unit. Now, one other thing just to mention that is also a part of this as well is immigration. And there's different terms for immigration. You can refer to someone as being an alien, not the antennas sticking out of their head and their green faces coming out of UFOs. But just someone who's not from this country is considered an alien. You have legal aliens, people who are legally here through documentation. They have paperwork. Maybe they're here to work. Maybe they're here to go to school. Maybe they're here because they want to become a citizen. Those individuals are allowed to be here legally. Illegal aliens are people without documentation. They're here maybe once again to work, but they don't want to stay here. We have refugees. These are individuals who are leaving their home country because of some sort of crisis. We have the term immigrant itself, someone who is not from this country, someone who immigrates here, who comes here. And there's a process. It's called, naturalization. And with naturalization, we basically say you have to be able to read, write, and speak some basic English. You have to fill out a lot of paperwork. You have to go through a background check. You have to take a special test to show that you're potentially going to be a good citizen, or you understand what this government's all about and what this country's all about. And then if you successfully complete all this within 5 years, you take the oath of allegiance and you become a citizen, and you can complain about government just like everyone else. And the notion of illegal immigration is an issue because we have anywhere between 9 and 12 million people here, and that's a very rough number of people here who are living here illegally. And how we perceive these individuals sometimes dictates whether or not you are conservative or liberal, you're a Democrat or Republican. And this is not meant for social commentary on the review video, but just keep something in mind. We're all descendants of immigrants. I'm not saying that we embrace illegal immigration. I'm not saying that it should be something that should be accepted. But certainly we should look at the process by which we grant citizenship and ask the following question: is it effective? Are we doing a positive or negative service to people who want to come here, or people who are unsure about becoming a citizen because they're not sure if they'll be accepted? So enough of the social commentary, but certainly just remember with Unit 2, we're talking about Articles of Federation, failure. Constitution, it still works. It works today. It's been working for 225 plus years. We have constitutional amendments protecting individual rights and liberty, preventing the government from infringing upon your rights. We also know that we have civic duties, things we're required to do, and civic responsibilities, things that we should do but we don't have to do. And then understanding the fact that people want to come here. Even though we have a lot of poverty, we have issues within this country, people still view this country as being a great country. So if you want to become a citizen, we just ask that you go through this process of naturalization. It's not cheap, it's not easy, but we feel that at least at this point, is what you should do. And of course, remember, we are becoming a bilingual society. Spanish-speaking people are the fastest growing ethnic group in this country, is the fastest growing language in this country, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So as a country where we say one of our civic responsibilities is to tolerate others, respecting the rights of others, maybe we need to look more into that civic responsibility so that we can continue to make this country great and continue to thrive on all fronts in this country. So Unit 2, hopefully you get something out of this review. Next up, Unit 3, politics. Fun times. Until then, see you later.